Hello, I'm Nicole Harris, and 3 days ago, I received the most insulting piece of mail that's ever crossed my doorstep. It was a wedding invitation. Beautiful cream paper, gold embossing, the works. But this wasn't your usual invitation. It was a message from my daughter Esther saying I wasn't invited to her wedding. But here's the part that'll make your blood boil. Attached to this mockery of an invitation was an invoice. A $70,000 invoice with a handwritten note from my precious daughter that said, "Mom, since you would not be making it to the wedding, the least you can do is pay for it. Love, Esther." Love, Esther. The audacity. This girl thinks she can demand $70,000 from the woman who worked 3 jobs, sold her grandmother's jewelry, and sacrificed 42 years of her life just so little Princess Esther could have everything she ever wanted. She thinks she's dealing with the same broke, desperate mother who used to beg for overtime shifts just to afford her private school tuition. But here's what Esther doesn't know. And this is where her entitled little world is about to come crashing down. The woman she just tried to extort, the woman she just disrespected, in the most vile way possible, is not the same woman who raised her. See, while Esther was busy becoming a spoiled brat who treats her mother like a personal ATM, I was busy becoming someone she never saw coming. Someone with power. Someone with money. Someone who's done playing games with ungrateful children. And when I'm finished with her, Esther is going to learn that you don't bite the hand that fed you for 4 decades. You don't humiliate the woman who gave you everything. And you definitely don't send a $70,000 bill to someone who's been waiting for the perfect moment to teach you the hardest lesson of your life. If you want to see how a mother's love can turn into the most devastating revenge against an entitled daughter, hit that subscribe button right now and type what country you're watching from, because what I'm about to do to Esther will leave you speechless. But first, tell me in the comments, what would you do if your own child treated you like this? Because trust me, what I did next will shock you. But before I tell you how I destroyed her entitled little world, you need to understand the depth of sacrifice I made for this ungrateful child. You need to know exactly what Esther threw away when she sent me that invoice. I was 23 years old when Esther's father David walked out on us. Esther was barely 2, still in diapers, still calling for Daddy who was never coming back. He left us with nothing. No money, no support, no explanation. Just a note saying he wasn't ready for this responsibility. So there I was, a single mother with a toddler and bills I couldn't pay. Most people would have given up. Most people would have applied for welfare and called it a day. But not me. I refused to let my daughter grow up thinking she was unwanted or unloved. I got 3 jobs. 3. I was a hotel housekeeper during the day, cleaning up after people who made more in a week than I made in a month. Weekends, I worked catering events for rich families, serving food to people who wouldn't even look me in the eye. And at night, after Esther was asleep, I did data entry until 3 in the morning, typing numbers until my fingers cramped. Do you know what it's like to work 90 hours a week and still struggle to pay rent? Do you know what it's like to miss your daughter's first steps because you're scrubbing someone else's toilet? I missed her school plays because I was working. I missed parent-teacher conferences because I couldn't afford to take time off. I missed her childhood because I was too busy trying to give her a future. But I did it. I saved every penny, every dollar, every cent. I wanted Esther to go to private school, not public school where she'd be just another poor kid. I wanted her to have opportunities I never had. So I scrimped and saved and sacrificed for years. You want to know how desperate I was? I wore the same navy blue dress to every single parent event for 5 years. 5 years. The same dress to every school function, every graduation, every award ceremony. Other mothers would whisper about me. But I didn't care. Every dollar I didn't spend on myself was a dollar I could spend on Esther. And when she got older, it got worse. Suddenly, nothing was good enough for Princess Esther. She wanted designer clothes like her classmates. She wanted expensive summer camps. She wanted private tutoring for every subject. She wanted and wanted and wanted. I gave her everything. When she was 17 and wanted to go to that prestigious college, I sold my grandmother's wedding ring. The only thing I had left of my family, the only valuable thing I owned, and I sold it without hesitation. That ring was worth $8,000, exactly what I needed for her first semester. But here's where it gets really twisted. When Esther was 16, I did something that would come back to haunt me. I adopted an 8-year-old boy named Marcus from foster care. This kid had been bounced from home to home, never knowing what real love felt like. I saw him and thought, I have so much love to give, why not share it? Esther hated it. She absolutely hated sharing the attention. She hated that I was spending money on Marcus instead of buying her more designer handbags. She started treating him like dirt, making snide comments about how he didn't belong in our family. The irony, as you'll soon learn, is absolutely devastating. But Marcus was grateful for everything. When I gave him a second-hand bike, he cried with joy. When I helped him with homework, he thanked me every single time. He was everything Esther wasn't: humble, appreciative, loving. Meanwhile, Esther was becoming someone I barely recognized. She graduated college, summa cum laude I might add, and immediately got a job at a prestigious marketing firm. Suddenly she was making 6 figures, wearing expensive suits, driving a BMW. I was so proud of her. That's when she started dating Brad Wellington. Old money, country club family, the works. And that's when everything changed. Esther stopped visiting. She was always too busy with work or social events. When she did call, it was quick, distracted conversations where she barely listened to what I was saying. But I kept sending her care packages, birthday gifts, and flowers on holidays. I kept loving her unconditionally, even as she grew more and more distant. And the comments started. Little digs about my simple lifestyle. Mom, you really should update your wardrobe. Mom, maybe you should move to a nicer neighborhood. Mom, you need to start thinking about your image. My image? I was still working those same jobs. Still living in the same modest apartment. Still wearing clothes from discount stores. But now, instead of being proud of how hard I worked, Esther was embarrassed by me. Marcus, on the other hand, was excelling in school. He was grateful for every opportunity, every lesson, every moment of guidance I gave him. He was becoming the child I thought I had raised in Esther. But the real wake-up call came at Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago. Esther brought Brad to meet me. And I will never forget the look of shame in her eyes when she walked into my apartment. She was embarrassed. Of me. Of my home. Of everything I had sacrificed to give her the life she was now living. I had spent hours cooking, cleaning, making everything perfect. I even bought a new dress. The first new dress I'd bought in years. I wanted to make a good impression on the man my daughter loved. But from the moment they walked in, I could see Esther whispering to Brad, apologizing for my humble surroundings. And then she said something that cut deeper than any knife ever could. Brad, this is why I never talk about my background. Some people are just limited by their circumstances. Limited by my circumstances. The woman who worked 3 jobs to put her through private school was limited by her circumstances. The woman who sold her grandmother's wedding ring for her college tuition was limited by her circumstances. But it got worse. After dinner, I was cleaning up in the kitchen when I heard Esther on the phone with Brad's mother. She thought I couldn't hear, but every word was like a dagger to my heart. Don't worry, Mrs. Wellington. Once we're married, I'll minimize contact. She's not really our kind of people. Not our kind of people. The woman who gave up 40 years of her life, who sacrificed everything so she could become their kind of people, was not good enough for the family she was marrying into. And then came the final insult. Esther demanded that I not attend her engagement party because it might be awkward for Brad's family. She actually told me to stay away from celebrating her engagement because I would embarrass her. That night after they left, I sat in my kitchen and cried harder than I had since David abandoned us. But somewhere in those tears, something shifted, something hardened. Something inside me said, no more. I was done being the sacrificial lamb. I was done being the embarrassment. I was done being taken for granted by the child I had given everything to create. What Esther didn't know was that her cruelty had just awakened something in me that had been sleeping for decades. And what I was about to become would change everything. That night, sitting in my kitchen after Esther's cruel dismissal, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done being the victim. I was done being the woman everyone underestimated. It was time to become someone nobody saw coming. But here's the plot twist that's gonna blow your mind. For 10 years, while Esther was busy being embarrassed by my simple lifestyle, I had been quietly building a business empire right under her nose. Those community college classes I mentioned, they weren't just computer classes, they were MBA courses. Advanced finance, business management, corporate law. I was getting a master's degree in business administration while working full-time and raising 2 kids. And that data entry job I worked at night? I wasn't typing numbers into spreadsheets. I was managing investment portfolios for some of the wealthiest clients in the city. These people trusted me with millions of dollars because I had proven myself to be brilliant, reliable, and completely trustworthy. Mrs. Elizabeth Hartford was one of my first clients. She was 93 years old, a widow with no children and worth about $50 million. But she was also lonely, forgotten by distant relatives who only called when they needed money. Sound familiar? I didn't just manage her finances, I cared for her like family. I visited her every week, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I brought her homemade soup when she was sick. I listened to her stories about her late husband. I was there for her birthday parties when no one else bothered to show up. For 8 years, I was more than her financial advisor. I was her daughter. The daughter she never had. The daughter who actually loved her for who she was, not what she could provide. When Mrs. Hartford passed away 2 years ago, I was devastated. I had lost someone who truly understood me. But then came the reading of her will, and everything changed. She left me $2.3 million and her entire consulting firm. $2.3 million. Plus a business that was already generating 6 figures in annual profit. In one moment, I went from struggling single mother to millionaire businesswoman. But here's what made me different from every other person who suddenly comes into money. I kept it secret. I didn't tell Esther. I didn't tell anyone except Marcus. I wanted to see who my daughter really was when she thought I had nothing to offer her. And boy, did she show me. I moved to an upscale neighborhood, a beautiful house with a garden, a home office, everything I had ever dreamed of. I hired a stylist, bought a luxury car, and transformed my entire image. But I kept my old apartment too, as a front. Whenever Esther visited, I made sure she still saw the struggling mother she was so ashamed of. I was conducting the ultimate test. Would she love me if she thought I was poor? Would she respect me if she thought I was powerless? Would she value our relationship if she thought I couldn't benefit her social status? The answer was a resounding no. Meanwhile, Marcus was thriving. At 18, he was helping me with my business, learning everything I could teach him. He was grateful for every opportunity, every lesson, every moment I invested in him. He was becoming the successful, humble, hardworking person I thought I had raised in Esther. The irony was perfect. The adopted child was everything the biological child wasn't. The boy I chose to love was choosing to love me back. The son I saved from foster care was saving me from the heartbreak of having only one ungrateful child. But the real test came when Esther started planning her wedding. She was posting everything on social media. The dress shopping, the venue tours, the engagement photos. Everything except me. I wasn't in a single photo. I wasn't mentioned in a single post. I was completely erased from the most important day of her life. That's when I realized this wasn't just about embarrassment anymore. This was about complete rejection. She wasn't just ashamed of me. She was pretending I didn't exist. So I decided to let her have her perfect wedding without her imperfect mother. I watched from the sidelines as she planned a $70,000 extravaganza. I watched her choose flowers, taste cakes, send invitations to everyone except the woman who made it all possible. The day before her wedding, I got a call from the venue. Esther and Brad were in a panic. The bills were due, and they couldn't pay them. The vendors were threatening to take them to court. Their perfect wedding was about to become a financial nightmare. So I decided to pay them a visit. I walked into that luxury hotel in my finest dress, my hair perfectly styled, wearing jewelry that cost more than most people's cars. I looked like old money, like the kind of woman who belonged in Brad's social circle. I looked like everything Esther had always wanted to be. When I walked into the meeting room where Esther and Brad were arguing with vendors, she didn't even recognize me at first. Her own mother. She looked at me like I was a stranger, trying to figure out who this elegant, confident woman was. And then it hit her. The shock on her face was priceless. "Esther, darling," I said with a smile, "I believe you sent me an invoice?" The room went silent. The vendors looked confused. Brad looked terrified. And Esther looked like she had seen a ghost. "Mom," she whispered, "what are you doing here? And why do you look like..." "Like what, sweetheart? Like someone who matters? Like someone who belongs in your world?" That's when I calmly explained that I had been watching her true character emerge for years. I knew about the wedding all along. I knew she hadn't invited me. I knew she was in financial trouble. I knew everything. "I'll pay your $70,000 bill," I said. "But I have conditions." Her eyes lit up with greed. Even in her shock, all she could think about was the money. "You will publicly apologize for your behavior toward me. You will commit to family therapy. And you will treat Marcus with the respect he deserves as your brother." That's when Esther exploded. "You're manipulative," she screamed. "You're trying to control me. After everything I've accomplished, after everything I've built, you still want to make me feel guilty." And that's when I delivered the truth bomb that would shatter her world completely. "Esther," I said quietly, "I've been financially successful for years. I've been wealthy for years. I could have helped you anytime you needed it. But I wanted to see if you would love me without money. I wanted to see if you would respect me without status. I wanted to see if you would value our relationship without material benefit." The room was dead silent. You failed every single test. If you're loving this story of ultimate karma, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will leave you speechless. The truth I'm about to reveal will change everything you think you know about this family. Esther was standing there, face red with rage, screaming about how I owed her for all my years of sacrifice. About how I was manipulative for testing her loyalty. About how she had built her own life and didn't need me anymore. And that's when I realized she needed to learn the most devastating truth of all. "Esther," I said, my voice deadly calm, "there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you years ago, but I was protecting you from the truth." She stopped screaming. Something in my tone made her freeze. "You want to talk about what I owe you? You want to talk about sacrifice? Let me tell you about the biggest sacrifice I ever made." I opened my purse and pulled out a manila envelope. An envelope I had been carrying for 25 years, waiting for the right moment to reveal its contents. "David wasn't your father, Esther. He was your social worker." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her face went white. "You were abandoned by your birth mother when you were 2 years old. Left at a hospital with nothing but a note saying she couldn't handle being a mother anymore. You were placed in foster care, bounced between 3 different homes in 6 months." Esther's legs gave out. She sank into a chair, staring at me in horror. "I was 23, single, working as a hotel housekeeper, and I went to volunteer at the children's home on weekends. That's where I met you. This tiny, broken little girl who had been rejected by everyone who was supposed to love her." I pulled out the adoption papers, yellowed with age but perfectly preserved. "Back then, you were so scared of being abandoned again that you wouldn't let anyone get close to you. You would scream and cry anytime someone tried to hold you, But for some reason, you trusted me. You would fall asleep in my arms during story time. Brad was staring at both of us in shock. The vendors had gone completely silent. David was the social worker handling your case. He helped me navigate the adoption process. We fell in love during those months of paperwork and home visits. We got married, so I could provide you with a stable 2-parent home. Esther's hands were shaking as she reached for the papers. But the pressure of instant parenthood was too much for him. He couldn't handle having a traumatized toddler who woke up screaming every night. He couldn't handle the therapy sessions, the behavioral issues, the constant fear that you would be taken away if we made one mistake. I pulled out more documents, therapy records, medical reports, school evaluations. So he left. He abandoned both of us. But I stayed. I chose to stay. I chose to love you even when you were difficult. I chose to sacrifice everything to give you the stability you had never had. Esther was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Every single thing I did, the 3 jobs, the missed school plays, selling my grandmother's ring, I did it because I chose you. Not because I owed you. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to give an abandoned little girl the love she deserved. I spread out decades of report cards, school photos, medical records, receipts for everything I had ever bought her. I kept every single piece of evidence of my love for you. Every sacrifice, every moment, every dollar spent. Because I wanted you to know that you were chosen. You were wanted. You were loved unconditionally. That's when I heard the sound that would change everything. A phone camera clicking. Brad's mother, who had been standing in the corner watching this whole confrontation, had been recording everything. And she was live streaming it to her social media. "This is unbelievable," she was saying into her phone. "I'm watching an entitled daughter try to extort $70,000 from the woman who adopted her and sacrificed everything to raise her." Within minutes, the video was everywhere. The caption read, "Entitled daughter tries to extort adoptive mother. Watch till the end." The video went viral faster than anything I had ever seen. Thousands of comments pouring in, all of them condemning Esther's behavior. The story was picked up by news outlets, social media influencers, and morning talk shows. And that's when Esther's world completely collapsed. Her company fired her within 48 hours. They claimed the viral video reflected poorly on their family values brand. Her 6-figure salary, her prestigious position, her entire career, gone overnight. Brad's family immediately called off the wedding. They released a statement saying they could not support the union of their son with someone who shows such disrespect for the woman who raised her. Brad, coward that he was, didn't even have the decency to break up with her in person. He sent a text message. The wedding vendors refused to work with her. The venue canceled their contract. The country club where the reception was supposed to be held revoked their membership. She was persona non grata in the entire social circle she had worked so hard to join. Within a week, Esther had lost everything. Her job, her fiancé, her social status, her reputation. She was facing $70,000 in debt with no way to pay it. But I kept my word. I paid every single vendor directly. Not because I owed it to Esther, but because I didn't want innocent small business owners to suffer for her mistakes. 3 days later, Esther came to my real house, my beautiful, expensive home that she had never seen. She was broken, humiliated, and desperate. "Mom," she said, and for the first time in years, she sounded like the scared little girl I had adopted. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I lost everything. I have nothing left." I looked at her standing on my doorstep, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. A flicker of hope. "I know," I said gently. "I know you're sorry, and I know you're hurting." "Can I come home?" she whispered. "Can I please come home?" And here's what broke my heart. I wanted to say yes. After everything she had done, after all the cruelty and rejection, I still loved her. She was still my daughter. "There's one condition," I said. "You have to accept Marcus as your brother. You have to treat him with the love and respect he deserves. And you have to commit to therapy to understand why you became the person you became." She looked at me for a long moment. And then, even in her darkest hour, even when she had lost everything, her pride reared its ugly head. "I can't," she said. "I can't pretend that the adopted kid is my real brother. I can't pretend this is all my fault. I can't pretend you didn't manipulate me by hiding your money." And that's when I knew she hadn't learned anything. She was still the same entitled, ungrateful person she had always been. "Then you can't come home," I said quietly, "because this isn't about forgiveness anymore. This is about change, and you're not ready to change." But now, 3 years later, I'm not alone in this office. Marcus is here with me. He's 22 now, graduated summa cum laude from business school, and he's my business partner. The scared 8-year-old boy I adopted has become the most successful, humble, hardworking man I know. He's everything I hoped Esther would become. He's grateful for every opportunity, respectful of every lesson, and he loves me not for what I can give him, but for who I am. The irony isn't lost on me. The child I chose became the child who chose me back. You know what the most powerful lesson in all of this has been? I learned that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's enabling. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the consequences of their choices. For 40 years, I protected Esther from every hardship, every consequence, every moment of discomfort. I thought I was showing her love. But what I was really doing was teaching her that she could treat people terribly and still get everything she wanted. I thought sacrifice meant never saying no. I thought love meant never letting her fail. I thought being a good mother meant absorbing every bit of her cruelty and still coming back for more. But I was wrong. Love isn't about endlessly giving until you have nothing left. Love is about boundaries. Love is about consequences. Love is about teaching people how to treat you by what you're willing to accept. The day I closed that door on Esther, I wasn't being cruel. I was finally being loving. I was finally giving her what she needed instead of what she wanted. The chance to face the consequences of her choices, and hopefully learn from them. Here's what I wish I had understood decades ago. I spent 40 years trying to earn my daughter's love. I thought if I just sacrificed enough, if I just gave enough, if I just proved myself worthy enough, she would finally love me the way I loved her. It took me 65 years to learn that love can't be purchased, demanded, or negotiated. It can only be given freely, or not at all. Real love isn't transactional. It's not about what you can provide or how useful you are. Real love sees you at your worst and chooses to stay. Real love appreciates your sacrifices instead of taking them for granted. Real love lifts you up instead of tearing you down. I found that love with Marcus. The boy who had every reason to be angry at the world chose gratitude instead. The child who had been abandoned by his birth family chose to embrace his adopted family. The young man who could have taken advantage of my wealth chose to earn his place in my business. And you know what? I'm at peace with my decision about Esther. I'm at peace with the boundaries I set. I'm at peace with the consequences she faced. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not trying to earn anyone's love. I'm not sacrificing my dignity for someone else's comfort. I'm not setting myself on fire to keep someone else warm. I'm just living. Really living. In a beautiful home with a son who chose me back, running a business I built from nothing, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I can give them. But here's the final twist in this story. 6 months ago, I received a letter. It was from Esther. I recognized her handwriting immediately. My heart stopped for a moment when I saw it. After 3 years of silence, after all the burned bridges, after everything that had happened, she had written to me. The letter was thick, several pages long. I could see through the envelope that it was covered in her careful script. She had taken time with this letter. She had thought about it. I sat in this very chair, holding that letter, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe she had learned. Maybe she had changed. Maybe she was ready to be the daughter I had always believed she could be. For a moment, I wanted to tear it open. I wanted to read her words, to see if she had finally found the humility and gratitude that had been missing for so long. But then, I remembered something. I remembered the last conversation we had, standing on my doorstep. I remembered her inability to accept Marcus as her brother. I remembered her refusal to take responsibility for her actions. I remembered her pride, even in her darkest hour. And I realized that it didn't matter what the letter said. It didn't matter if she had learned her lesson, or if she was still the same entitled person she had always been. What mattered was that I had finally learned mine. I walked to my desk, opened the drawer, and placed the letter inside. Unopened, unread, and I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. Some bridges are meant to stay burned. Not out of spite, not out of hatred, but out of self-preservation. Out of respect for the person you've become. Out of recognition that some relationships are too toxic to resurrect, no matter how much love you once shared. I chose myself. For the first time in my life, I chose myself, and it felt like freedom. The letter is still in that drawer. I look at it sometimes, and I don't feel anger anymore. I don't feel regret. I just feel grateful that I finally learned the most important lesson of all. That the people who are meant to be in your life will show you through their actions, not their words. Marcus shows me every day. He shows me through his respect, his gratitude, his love. He shows me that I was right to believe in the power of choosing family, even when family doesn't choose you back. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. And I have to ask you this. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to cut someone toxic out of your life, even though you still loved them? Have you ever had to choose your own peace over someone else's comfort? Let me know in the comments, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is close the door on someone who refuses to walk through it with respect. Remember, you can't love someone into loving you back. But you can love yourself enough to stop trying. If this story has taught you anything about setting boundaries, about recognizing your worth, about choosing the people who choose you back, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Because everyone deserves to know that they're worthy of real love, not the conditional, transactional kind that leaves you empty and exhausted.